So here is a question from the fourth grade class of Ms. Genovese. And the question is this: what is a synonym for grammar? And I particularly love this question because in the question itself is contained an understanding of grammar, an understanding of the concept of a synonym, that there are words in English and indeed in just about every language that mean more or less the same thing, so that we can speak of one thing or one experience using not just one, but sometimes several words. And I think that this is a very perceptive and useful question because in the realm of grammar, especially in the last 30 or 40 or 50 years, has taken on a kind of bad reputation. Grammar is often seen, not always, but often seen as something that's kind of boring and dry and stultifying and uh, opposed to creativity. But one way to open up the study of grammar is precisely to ask this question that you're asking, which is to say, well, what are other ways that we can think about grammar? What are some synonyms for grammar? So here are a couple that occur to me in this moment. The first, of course, is the synonym that Marie gives at the very beginning of the Basic Cozy Grammar course, which is that grammar is a technique. So a synonym for grammar is technique, specifically the technique of language or the technique of English. Now, technique suddenly brings us into a new realm of experience because we can think of the technique that a pianist has or a musician, playing her scales on the piano or on the violin or the clarinet or the trumpet or whatever it is, that you have to practice, you have to gain some facility, you have to gain some technique to be able to make music. Similarly, the technique of English is indispensable for making ourselves clearly and persuasively and memorably understood, to express the deepest thoughts and feelings we may carry in our heart through words. We need to draw on all of the possibilities of language. And the technique of language or the grammar of language is simply a way of becoming aware of these possibilities of language. So that's one synonym, but that's not the only one. Here's another synonym for grammar: structure. So just as we can speak of the grammar of English, we can speak of the structure of English. We can speak of the way that a sentence is built. Here you can see we're invoking an entire sort of system of metaphors. Here, language is something like a house. And to build a sentence, we need to have parts that can hold together and support the sentence. The structure of a sentence is what gives a sentence meaning. Earlier today, we were talking about subordinate clauses and principal clauses. These clauses help us to create more complex sentences, which, because they're constructed out of these clauses, are nonetheless meaningful, are nonetheless able to convey something to us, whether it's a thought or a story or an experience. And in fact, my favorite synonym for grammar probably is structure, because it returns us to the question of building blocks. Right from the very beginning of the Basic Cozy Grammar course, we're encouraging students to learn about the parts of speech, these basic building blocks of the language. And the more clear and the more clearly we understand the building blocks of the language, the greater the buildings we become able to build. Let me just see if I might surprise myself with another synonym for grammar. We've had technique, we've had structure. What other synonyms for grammar might there be? If we wanted to be a little bit more daring, we might even say that another synonym for grammar is something like pulse or rhythm. or flow. Now, these are not terms that people normally bandy about in discussions of grammar. However, when our technique with language, when the structure of our sentences is sound, we find that our language starts to flow. It starts to have its own rhythm. It starts to have its own pulse to it. So we might say that grammar is also the possibility of flow, the possibility of a kind of rhythmic integrity, similar to structure, the possibility of a kind of even musical eloquence. And for me, this is where grammar ceases to be anything like a dry subject, but becomes a tool. It becomes a tool in our toolbox for making the most meaning and music with words. So I hope that is a helpful answer to this wonderful fourth grade class about what are some synonyms for grammar.